we're clearly in this together. The utility partners are at the table and they're doing it, like I said, for the right reasons. But how do we continue to move forward? What's next, and what would you like to offer up to us in that regard?
So I'll jump in. I'll say that we don't we don't have nearly as many facilities in the United States as Walmart does, and we have that luxury. Then I think spend a good amount of time on each of our facilities, and also we are willing to sort of be what we call in the industry sort of the anchor customer or the pilot test case moving forward. Assuming that it's within reason from a cost perspective and meets our internal agenda. We're always willing to partner to create something new. That's sort of Google's MO. So I think that, the biggest thing I would say right now is that I wouldn't wait the traditional regulatory calendar to drive when we start making these conversations happen and when we start thinking about innovative new ways to do this, because I find that when that happens, we end up being in a situation where time becomes the enemy, and we get boxed out of really being able to work with each other. And so I think it's important that we are constantly having these conversations and really also being willing to say we might work outside that calendar for a while until we get something, until we can engage our commission counterparts and engage our other stakeholder counterparts. So that's the first thing, is let's not all wait until the next rate case or the next IRP to talk about this stuff. Let's be doing it actively all the time, and so we can get to where we want to be sooner.
Great. Steve, would you add anything to that?
So I think Carolyn really hit the nail on the head in terms of continuing that conversation. We've been in conversations with many utilities for the last 10, 15 years around renewables, and we certainly need to continue, but we also need to expand that conversation to start talking about zero carbon. I think it's important to remember that ultimately we buy three products from a utility. We buy the electrons, we buy reliability, which is the 5 nines when everything's going well, and we buy resilience when we need to recover and restore. So we have to be able to look at what are the appropriate options for all three paths, where those paths overlap, and what that looks like. Because as we look at the future, solar and wind are pretty easy paths to look at, providing green electrons to the grid. But as we've talked about, and Caroline mentioned as well, those are intermittent. Those don't really on their own solve for the 5 nines or solve the resilience question. So technologies that are going to deliver the 5 nines. Caroline's mentioned nuclear. There's talk of hydrogen. There's expansion of hydro. Carbon capture and sequestration. What are the technologies that really, keep the power on and help us manage all the green electrons from solar and wind and spread them out across the 24/7 of every day. And then on the resilience side, that's a really big growing area of concern for us as we're about to work our 4th hurricane in about a month this weekend, and looking at right now resilience is a fossil play. It's going to be natural gas, it's going to be diesel, and we have to look at what technologies could step in there, because it's not just about keeping the lights on for one night. When big storms come through and you have serious issues, that we may have to have a generator on there for 2, 3, 4 weeks. And so, the solution has to be able to deliver for really long extended periods of time, be economic, be feasible in terms of, fitting on our facility, that sort of thing. And it's also going to drive sort of how we think about delivering renewables. There's a lot of really good discussion out there right now around bringing remote renewables into load centers, the transmission that's needed for that. But as we look at the resilience side and look at Entergy's experience, where if I'm remembering correctly, every transmission line that serves Southwest Louisiana went down, some of them catastrophically. All the wind in the Midwest doesn't help us at that time. So what are clean local resources that we can look at to ensure that we're able to optimize and really leverage the scale of the transmission grid, but also ensure that at all times we have clean resources to keep our facilities and our communities